welcome back. If you're new here, my name's Laura and I'm a fourth year medical student currently studying in the UK. This video is all about interviews and how to prepare for them in advance of your own MMIs or panel interviews. Medical school interviews can be really daunting, and for me were one of the most nerve-wracking parts of the whole application process. I myself have sat many MMIs prior to coming to medical school, so have first-hand experience that I want to share with you guys in advance of your own interviews. There are many ways you can prepare for your interviews to feel confident and ace each question asked to you. So here are my top tips and some of the questions that came up in each of my interviews, so that you can be fully prepared for these questions if they do come up. So here are some of the interview questions I got asked at each of my MMIs. So first up, one of the sections that came up in each of my interviews was the motivation behind why you want to study medicine. So question number 1 is, why do you want to study medicine? It's such a vast question and you can take this in so many different directions. So it's worth having a think about what really inspired you and motivates you to want to study medicine. This can really put you on the spot if you're not expecting it, and it can be a really critical thing that they're looking for to understand why you really want to be in their medical school and study medicine. This is a real time to shine and show off all the reasons why you would be perfect at studying medicine, as well as why you are being motivated to be a medical student. You can use personal stories, things like your work experience, and really delve into why you chose to decide a career in medicine. For instance, you may want to use a personal experience you've had with the healthcare service. You may want to talk about family members that have medical health conditions. You may also want to bring in some work experience that you've done. Whatever you do though, please try to avoid the common quote, "I want to help others." As much as this may be true and it could be a massive motivation for you, try to avoid that quote as it does come up from many students very often and it doesn't get a great reception. If you do wish to use this, try to go deeper than just that quote itself and try to bring in other things, like I've already mentioned, and try to reflect on the true reasons why you've chosen to study medicine. Question number 2 now, and this was one of the ones that seemed to be always at my first station, and if you're not prepared for it in advance, can seem quite daunting. And it is, tell us about yourself. Tell us about yourself is quite a deep question, as there are so many angles you could use on this question. There are so many different ways to answer this, and it is really important that you keep it within the 5 or 6 minutes that you have available during your MMI. So in advance, you may want to think about 5 or 6 qualities that you think makes you a suitable candidate to be a medical student. You may also want to think about things that you do outside of school, like hobbies and interests you have. Try to be as unique as possible. Remember, the examiners or interviewers will be listening to so many different versions of the same answer, so be as unique as possible so that you stick in their mind throughout the day. Also make sure to show off some of your skills and qualities, such as teamwork, leadership, dedication, commitment. These are all real buzzwords that examiners and interviewers love to hear. Have a good think about what you might want to bring up during this question so that when it comes up, it's your time to shine and you can show off all the fabulous qualities that you have, and that would make you a perfect candidate to study medicine at their medical school. So the next really common section that they will test and question you on is your ethics and how you deal with certain situations. I've made a full video about ethical scenarios and the 5 pillars of ethics, so please go check this out. If you've got any questions or queries about this, also feel free to leave it in the comment section below. In these questions, it's really important to include a very critically analysed and balanced answer. They're looking for a good structure and flow to these answers, and also that you can weigh up both sides of a scenario and then give them a general conclusion. Remember, you don't necessarily have to fall into one camp or the other, but you need to weigh up why both things could be considered and how ethically you can prevent things from being a negative for patients and other people in healthcare settings. Ethical questions usually tend to be quite topical, so it's really important that you're up to date and aware of what's going on in the media and on the news about healthcare and healthcare advancements. It can be really daunting if you get asked something about an ethical scenario, but you actually don't really know the background or anything to do with it. They use these questions to weed out people that stay on top of the news and stay on top of healthcare, so do definitely check out these resources before going into your interview. Medical schools tend to use very topical ethical questions. These can range from a lot of different sources, but I would highly recommend following the news and media prior to going into your interview. This will really help with topical resources and also give you good ammo when going in and answering these questions. You'll be able to bring in a lot of different knowledge from areas, and you can also quote this if you can remember things about the topics they bring up. They tend to be very topical, such as COVID, the decline in people accepting vaccines recently, and general healthcare scenarios such as funding for the NHS and prioritising patients in different ways. So question 3 is, what would you do if you believed a treatment could save a patient's life, but they're refusing the treatment? This is a really hard-hitting question, but it is something that doctors have to deal with on a daily basis. It's testing a lot of your thinking skills and also asking you to weigh up both sides of this conversation. First of all, you've got to think about the patient and always put the patient first. However, you also have to think of the best interest for this patient. You may want to bring in the 5 pillars of ethics and talk about autonomy, as patients do have their own ability to make decisions. You may also want to bring in the age of this patient and whether they actually have mental capacity to make a decision. This might include the Gillett competency, and if you're unaware of what these are, do check out other videos I've made, and I've talked all about these. A really good place to get information about this is also on the GMC website, so do check this out. I've put the link in the description down below. Remember to structure your questions so that you're balancing both sides of the argument in favor of the patient and in favor of the doctor's decision to help with the treatment. And then at the end, tie it all together and maybe surmise what you would do in that situation, but that's not necessarily required. Remember that you've got a limited time and that the doctor or the person interviewing you will not be asking you any more questions in this time, so do make use of all the time given to you when answering this question. There are many avenues that you can think about this, and you can even bring examples of everyday life, such as palliative care, cancer treatment, and organ donation, for example. But there are many avenues that you can take this question, so use it to your full advantage. This is just one example of many ethical scenarios that they might give you, but it is worth being aware of. So make sure that you're looking at the media in advance of your interview and also using all the resources available to you. Check the description down below. If you've got any questions, also leave comments. So another very, very popular question and question type is talking about teamwork and leadership. So they really want to explore a lot of different qualities when asking you interview questions. And some of these will be things that they're looking for in the qualities that doctors require. And the top ones of this are definitely teamwork and leadership. There's always a fine balance between both, and it's really important to demonstrate these in your questions and answers. So an unbelievably common question, and one I got asked at all my interviews, was tell us about a time when you showed teamwork skills, or tell us about a time when you showed leadership skills. These are really common questions and ones that you can be well prepared for in advance. So here are a few tips on how to prepare. So a really good mnemonic that I used for answering these questions was the STAR technique. S for situation, T for task, A for action, and R for result. You can use examples from any setting and anything that you've really experienced or done. Often you do things as a team and you're not even aware of it, or that you lead something in school, on a community team, in a school team, or an extracurricular activity that you love to do. They can be really simple but really effective, and try to keep it as real as possible. Don't be too abstract with these questions because you've only got a limited amount of time and they're really just wanting to see how you actually use your skills and qualities to help you in all these settings. Remember to be unique, but don't exaggerate. Also, make sure that all of the things you talk about are real and have actually happened. Interviewers aren't dumb, and they have definitely heard many fake stories and fabricated ideas. They want to hear something that's personal to you and that shows off all the best qualities you have to offer. Even when answering a leadership question, you can always tie it in with how you also listen to others and have a really good ability to be approachable and to be fair. Make sure you're bringing in continually other qualities that you have to offer, and don't just solely base it around the one question that they've asked. They really want to see you flourish in these questions, as they're very basic but can lead you down the wrong way if you haven't really thought about them in advance. So I hope some of these tips will really help. To answer this question, include lots of buzzwords. They love this, and it will gain you a lot more marks if you can add these into these sort of questions. Things such as adaptability, listening skills, clear communication, and your ability to have a balanced judgment on everything that you're doing. They really love these words, and it will highly mark you in these questions. So another really valuable and quite important part of the interview process is testing and checking whether you really know what you're getting yourself into. So this section is all about your knowledge of the profession. They'll often ask you questions revolving around medical healthcare scenarios and how you deal with them, but they also want to test if you actually know what the NHS is like and what the working environment in the NHS is really about. So question number 5, and one that I got in all of my MMIs in a variety of different formats, is what do you think are the major concerns and challenges facing doctors today? This is such an open-ended question, and you can look at this from so many different viewpoints. From junior doctors to consultants to all the different specialties of doctors as well. There are so many different angles that you can take this from, and it's really important that you think about this in advance. Have a read up about what each specialty is looking at or doing at the minute, what their major issues are. Is it pay? Is it working hours? Is it working conditions? Is it staffing levels? Is it access to resources? There are lots and lots of things to think about with this question, and it is a chance for you to show off your knowledge of the profession and the NHS core values, such as putting patients first at all the decisions made by doctors and healthcare professionals. MDT, or multidisciplinary teams, working alongside people is really important, and you can show this off in this question as well. You can use your first-hand experience if you've got work experience in any of these healthcare settings. And you can talk about comorbidities and patients' health declining in these recent years, as well as impacts from things like COVID and flu. Things such as the winter pressures, which have actually turned into all year round pressures, and so many more things that you may think are more relevant in your area. I'd highly recommend looking up on the NHS in the local areas that the universities are set, as they'll really love if you can bring up things in the cities and towns that you're based in, such as budgets, staffing levels, and so many other resources issues. You can have a keen eye and look at all of these things, but it's also really important to tie it back to you. So make sure that you can think of first-hand experiences or things that are relevant to you as an individual and make it really unique. It can be a common issue with students in interviews when they just go in and really talk about the pressures facing doctors constantly, and it really doesn't interest the interviewer to hear this, as they're wanting to interview you and ways it impacts you on a daily basis, or what you think you could do to change things in the future. So this one is arguably one of the most important things to get right at your interview, and if you've got this nailed to a T before you even get into interviews, it will make things run a lot more smoothly. Medical schools really want to see that you've done your homework about their medical school. So a common question, in fact, I think every medical school will ask this, is why did you choose our medical school? They want to know why you really chose to go to study with them for 5 or 6 years and why you want to be in this area of medical education. Use this to your advantage and do use the websites of the universities before you go to interview. They will have so many quotes and stats on why you should choose their medical school, so use this to your advantage. This question can be really daunting if you haven't prepared for it, and in my very first interview I did find this quite a scary thing to comprehend. However, once you have got it nailed, you will find this rolls off the tongue and it makes you sound great. This question leaves open so many different avenues for you to go down. Remember, you do have a time limit, but make sure that you're bringing up all of the big hitting points about why you personally chose this medical school. It might be to do with what they have to offer you, such as their facilities, their program might offer intercalation, their learning style might suit you best. You might have a connection to the area. It might also include things that the rest of the university has to offer, such as extracurricular activities or specialties that you're interested in are native to that location. Really have a hard think about why you actually chose that medical school, and whatever you do, avoid saying that it was good for you because it had a low UCAT score, or it didn't require you to do the BMAT, or that you thought you might just get in here because the stats looked good for you. They want to know why you actually chose their medical school, and even if you're not entirely sure why you did, make sure that you give them what they want to hear. They want to hear that you chose their medical school because you think it is the best. The best medical school in the UK, maybe not, but definitely it's the best medical school for you and why it's suited for your learning and for the 5 to 6 years that you'll be there. They want to know that you're committed to not only medicine, but that when you take a space at their medical school, you'll be committed to their medical school and have things to offer them in the future as well. You can also use this section and question to answer it to your advantage. You might be the top of your sports in your school or local area, and they might really want you on their teams. They might also want you because you won prizes for science or medical education elsewhere. You might be a postgrad and have lots to offer them as a medical school. Use this to your advantage and show off by adding a little bit of flair into your answers. These questions can be very broad and very basic, can also be answered really poorly by some students. So make sure to put in a unique reason why you chose our medical school and why you think you would be most suited to be chosen as a medical student for their school. So I thought I'd just tie up everything by adding in a couple more tips about how to just generally prepare for interviews. I've made a full video all about this, so do check it out. But medical school interviews can be very daunting, and I am fully aware of that. So here are a couple of tips on how to be prepared for your medical school interviews and how to ace them. So tip number 1 is get the practice in as soon as possible. Medical school interviews can be given to you at very short notice, and it's really important that you aren't flustered and scared prior to your interview, as this just makes it more nerve-wracking and gives you more anxiety. They can be really well prepared for by just asking other people to ask you general questions about medicine, about you, about things you love to do, and just remember, be unique and add your own flair to everything you answer. It can be as simple as getting a couple of your friends together and just bouncing questions off each other. Get family members to ask you very simple questions. Interviewers are trying to get to the bottom of why you want to study medicine and why you would fit with their medical school, so just bear this in mind when you're practicing. Remember to keep to a time as well, as you are limited to about 5 to 6 minutes for each question. And this can go a lot quicker than you expect when you start rambling in an interview. You want to be clear, precise, and get to the point of what they're really asking about in each interview question. Another tip is to stay calm and composed during the interviews. Some of my MMIs had up to 15 questions during them, which can be quite a long day and can keep you on your toes. You've also got to keep alert and keep answering each of these questions as you go. There was quite a lot of anxiety around interviews, but make sure that you put this to the back of your mind. Whatever you do, don't bring a question from another station with you. Don't think about it once it's done. There's nothing you can change, and it will just create an issue in the next station and the station after that. Having 15 questions sounds like a lot, but it actually just gives you 15 different opportunities to show off. It gives you the opportunity to discard a couple of the questions if they don't go so well. Remember that each student in the room with you is feeling the exact same way, but with a little bit more preparation, you can feel more comfortable and more ready for each question coming your way. Remember to read and listen to what the examiners are asking you, and make sure that you don't miss out extra ways to add in qualities and skills that would be great to add to your questions. And my final tip is to just be yourself. Remember that each person is so individual, so even if you overhear someone talking about something you never even heard of, don't worry about it. Be yourself, add your own flair, and be unique as possible. Remember, don't exaggerate too much, as examiners can tell, but to add a little bit of your own sparkle so that they'll remember you and to give you higher marks, because they may not have heard this, even though they've asked this question to potentially 30 students already. Interviews can be daunting, but with preparation and watching videos like this, you're on the right tracks to making it more comfortable and to make you more confident when going in. If you have questions or want to put anything in the comments down below, feel free. And if you did enjoy this video, please feel free to share with any of your friends going through the same process. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope you found this useful. See you in the next video.